So I think right away, it's important to remember AI is not the devil and AI is not God.
Some that have no idea, they're very scared and skeptical, which maybe we should be.
Yeah. AI is a set of technologies that attempts to mimic human intelligence.
My name is Dale DeMelt, and I pastor a church in Maple Grove, Minnesota, so a suburb outside of Minneapolis. And our mission is to make and multiply disciples in a diverse, multi-generational church. And, we really started saying that before it was true. And you were there for that. And we've been able to see that starting to come, right? And just by just the faithfulness of our people, and part of the discipleship is getting to know what's happening in the world around us. And I think, I know that I am not alone based on the information going out there and the discussions happening on the topic of AI. And so, Jessi, I've known you and your husband Blake and your kiddos now for almost 9 years. I mean, you've been there for almost as long as Jana and I have. Yeah. And your family's amazing. I think of...
We feel the same about you guys.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I think of, so your youngest, River, that photo of when she was, how old was she?
If it's the one I'm thinking of, she would have been about 15 months old, right in front of the doors on the sidewalk.
So here she is.
Barely
she just plopped her little butt down right in front of the church doors.
Yeah, she was the welcoming committee.
Yeah, and I took a picture of her, and I think I even posted, I'm like, this is our welcoming committee for this Sunday. Yeah. And so what I want to do is I'm looking at this as a pastor saying, hey, this is something that the topic of artificial intelligence, the technologies, this digital age that we're in, how can we help disciple our church? Yeah. Which is part of our mission, right? And so if you could just talk about maybe who you are and what it is you do, because I mean, let's face it, I could have Googled, or I could have gone on ChatGPT and said, hey, what's AI for a podcast? And then I could have acted like I knew what I was talking about. And, but I mean, here you are a data scientist and you teach at a very prestigious university in the cities. And so why don't you talk about who you are, what you do, and then I'll just start peppering you with questions.
Excellent. All right, let's go. So I'm Jessi Benzel, and like I said, we've known each other for a while, which has been fantastic. Yeah. We've appreciated you guys very much, and I'm really excited to do this today. I agree with you. This is something that that is going to be I hope will be very helpful to a lot of people who are kind of wondering how to navigate this, especially around, how to navigate this with their families, with their children. It's more than just a business technology. This is something that's affecting everybody. So I think this is really fantastic, and I'm excited to be a part of it with you. But yeah, like you said, I'm a data scientist by trade. So what that means, I'm a lot like Chandler from Friends, where you kind of really, it's just numbers and we don't really know what it is. No, I do a lot of data analysis. There's a lot of things like reporting and data modeling and all sorts of just boring, nerdy stuff. Technology is a big part of my job. But then, as you mentioned, I teach as well. So I teach courses at the University of St. Thomas in data analytics and visualization, which is just how to handle data and then how to make it into
For the record,
pictures.
I emailed you back and said, can you please tell me what visualization is right now? Because I have zero clue. And this is post-grad.
Correct. Yep,
classes.
I teach master's students.
Yep, okay.
Yep. And then the other course that I teach, I actually co-developed with my colleague who I co-teach with as well. It's a course on AI ethics. And I think a lot of that material is going to probably come into our conversation tonight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we've been teaching that course for about 3 years now. We've had about 6 cohorts of students go through. We're on our third year. And St. Thomas is one of the first universities in the country to require a course on AI ethics for their master's programs in AI. Wow. Even now, not a lot of universities require it. Some have started to offer it. But St. Thomas is one of the first ones to actually require it, which I think is a very cool thing if we're putting people out into the workforce with this technology. Given how impactful it is, we should be, ensuring that they have a foundation in ethics and responsible use, which is where we come in with our course.
So how did you, if you don't mind me asking, how did you get your foot in the door for something that's so so new
Yeah.
in the country.
Yeah. So I was very fortunate to kind of be in the right place at the right time, which we know it's not luck, but I did a study with the chair of the department on bias in generative AI output. So this is going back to 2022, 2023-ish timeframe when ChatGPT was just hitting the scene, and it was, the big thing. At that time, it came out in November of 2022, and we did our study in 2023 and then published it in 2024. Okay. And then through that process, we just started having conversations about, what do people need to be able to navigate this? And then St. Thomas asked me if I would come in and help design this course, and then it just sort of went from there.
That's amazing.
But, it was pretty incredible. Yeah. And I love it. I tell people, even when I teach and I introduce myself in the first night, I say, I'm a data scientist and I have the best job in the world.
Wow.
I've really enjoyed it.
Well, I was thinking to myself, the first, couple, or just a lot of the things you were just saying, most of the people have no idea what you're saying.
Yeah. Fair.
So let's go ahead and start with the absolute basics, because I'm thinking, okay, we're going to put this on our church YouTube page, right? And there's going to be some people that have one idea of what AI is. There's going to be some that have no idea. They're very scared and skeptical, which maybe we should be.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be people who have no idea. And so how would you, if you were to pretend like I'm 5?
Sure.
Right. And it's just like an Office episode, just dumb it down as much as possible for us to understand.
So the one sentence description that we use week 1 of AI ethics is that AI is a set of technologies that attempts to mimic human intelligence, which is a very generic way to describe it, but that's essentially the goal of AI, is to mimic human intelligence. So AI is a term that's been around. It's attributed to a working session at Dartmouth back in the 1950s, and British computer scientists, post-World War II back in the 50s. So it's a relatively newish term, considering how long scientific pursuits have. It's not hundreds of years old, right, by any means. And it is a much more generic term than it was back then. But there's still a lot of things that fall under AI that were considered even back then. So things like machine learning. So that's a term that folks may be familiar with. When you think about social media and your news feed, for example, the things that are recommended to you, YouTube, Netflix, all those kinds of things, recommender systems, that falls under machine learning, which is sort of a subdivision of AI. I think what people think of mostly as AI nowadays is things like ChatGPT. That really changed a lot of the public perception around AI. Sure. So it was a little bit less of the nerdy recommender systems and neural networks and all the dorky technology stuff.
Right.
And it's more these large language models. So people may have heard that term as well, LLM, large language models. That's what ChatGPT is, Gemini, Bing Chat for a while, Claude, things like that.
So it made it accessible for everybody, essentially. So now it makes, so I guess that's kind of forming in their minds what it is, when it's actually just really a small piece of what it actually is.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a diagram that we share so if you think about circles, right? So the big circle out here would be AI. It's the whole world of AI. There's robotics in there. There's all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
Anything that would attempt to mimic human intelligence. And then if you zoom in a little further, you get things like machine learning, which we just talked about. Further down into machine learning, there's stuff called deep learning. And then even further down into that is where we get generative AI, which is what a lot of people now think of as AI. So things like ChatGPT.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's just a tiny piece of this whole big world.
Yeah. So something I was thinking about when you have a new class and you're hearing from your students, what do you think is probably most misunderstood about AI?
Yeah. So one of the most common misconceptions that we hear is that it's always right. So we have a lot of students who, one of the things we ask students to do is reflect on, what's a position that you that may have changed in your mind as you went through the material in this course. And that's one that we hear a lot. Students are thinking that, because something comes out of AI or is decided by AI.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just not the case.
Right.
There's a lot of risk involved, and there's a lot of chaos even in how models are created. And folks don't realize that. So I would say that's probably the biggest.
When you say there's a lot of chaos,
yeah.
What does that mean?
Okay. We're gonna get nerdy for a second. Okay.
All right.
So a large language model at its core is a statistical prediction. That's it. It's predicting the next word that comes in a sequence. So as you and I are speaking, my brain is picking what word to say next, right? In the sequence. Large language models are doing the same thing. But it's not just strictly the same word every time, right? So that's part of how you get the variation in responses. So something like a ChatGPT doesn't say the same thing every time in response to the same prompt. There's a little bit of randomness that's included as well. So it's not exactly the same thing every time.
Yeah. And that's programmed into
exactly.
it, right?
Yep, that's by design. Yep, that's on purpose. Because otherwise, like I said, if you and I prompted using exactly the same language, we would get the same output, which isn't very fun.
Right.
So yeah, there's a little bit of chaos introduced by design,
Gotcha.
and that can also result in factual issues and all kinds of things like that. And like so, that's stuff that I don't think people understand when they first jump in and start using it. It's something we see in our students a lot.
All right. Well, I mean, and what do you think about general public misconceptions? Like what is misunderstood about maybe how it works or what it is? I don't know. You called it it's trying to mimic human intelligence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But it's got, it has our human intelligence, decades and decades and hundreds of years of information to go through.
Yeah.
So, it's mimicking, but it's also analyzing so much of our information. Actually,
that's right.
This makes me think of, so I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, and I had it in a sermon where I said, we've gone from the industrial age to the information age. And so now this is 3 or 4 years ago, or no, maybe 5. And it was before I knew anything about, chat or Gemini, any of those things. And I remember I said something like, so we've gone from the information age to we're going to go to the age of infrastructure, which it works well for I for industrial, I for information. Now we've got I for infrastructure.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the topic was and the point that I was making with that. But, as I think about it, I remember thinking it will be impossible for us to analyze this much information. It'll be impossible.
Yeah.
At that time I was thinking that. And now I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we can actually, really, all that information could have just been, who can go through, there's tens of thousands of studies and all this stuff that just would have been lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Through time, because what do you do with all of this information? And now we have a place that, this thing can go through all of it in just, a moment.
Yeah.
And so, that's going to, that changes our...
It does very much. That's, I think, part of why AI is so impactful. So you should be a data scientist because you hit on some very key principles in just, data science 101. One of my favorite quotes is, we are drowning in information but starving for knowledge. And you just hit that nail on the head. We have so much, if you think about even words as data or language as data, there's so much data that not one person can't go through it.
Right, exactly.
AI really excels with the 3 V's of data science. Volume is one of those V's. So that's exactly what you just described. There's so much to fish through.
Exactly.
And these are highly efficient algorithms that can detect patterns that would take humans just a very long time. And it's too much even for our brains to handle. So if you think about how much information you can fit into your brain, there is vastly more than that exists. So you hit the nail on the head. One thing though, that like I said with that quote, we're drowning in information but starving for knowledge. I think that's another really common misconception with AI, is that because it's able to mimic intelligence and mimic language the way that we speak, that doesn't mean it understands truth. So it can...
That sounds like a sermon right there.
Come on. It can behave as though it does, and it can produce language that sounds like it does, but it has no concept of truth.
Right.
There's a concept called a hallucination in AI. People may have heard that term.
Yep.
It's basically when a language model puts out something that isn't true or that isn't real. And there are technical methods that data scientists and AI engineers can use to minimize that.
And I think that like when there was, when there were reports and news stories of AI saying crazy things. And then that's when I first started hearing the hallucinations argument, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of
that's
like
correct?
So when it went off onto some okay.
Yep, that's absolutely correct, and that's oftentimes a result of that randomness that that's in our model. It's et cetera, et cetera. So like I said, there are things that engineers can put in place to try to minimize hallucinations, and often companies will present their model as, we've fixed this through this, insert technical name for thing here. But in reality, it's just minimizing it. It's not preventing it altogether. Okay. And I think that's something that people, again, miss. And oftentimes, because sales pitches don't talk about the limitations of the models. They just say, look at how great and look at how accurate this is. And we've made this thing that's just as knowledgeable as a PhD in this field. But in reality, there's still quite a bit of risk and unknown.
Yeah, well, especially if it can't, how'd you say it? Tell truth?
Yeah. Yep. It doesn't have a concept of truth.
Right. So,
nope.
I mean,
it knows what words go in what order, but it doesn't understand truth.
Wow.
Because it doesn't understand. It's not sentient. It's not. So what do we do with that?
Yeah.
Right. One thing that I would definitely recommend is having that understanding every time you go to any kind of AI tool. So if you are using, let's say, ChatGPT to help you write an email, fantastic use case for ChatGPT. Right. Low risk, excellent. Something anybody can do. Yeah. And it might make it go faster for you. That's great. But understand that what it's putting out is not, like I said, it's not based in truth. It's not based in reality. It's based in math. So you still have to have involvement in what's coming out of that. If you're asking it to teach you about something, you may get information back that's correct, but it's still your job to verify what comes out of there. It might point you in the right direction. So if you're asking, let's put it into context with somebody who wants to look through news stories or learn about a current event or something. It can point you in the right direction, and it can give you some information that might be accurate. But you still have the responsibility to go and validate that information, because again, it's not rooted in reality or truth.
Okay, so this is I think this is an important part to talk about, and I think for us to understand, is it could put out a scripture or I know there's been on social media, somebody will post a scripture that's just they saw from AI, or they'll share it, but it's not even in the Bible.
Yeah.
And so can you explain what's happening there?
Absolutely. That's an excellent example of a hallucination.
Okay.
So what's happening is the model is putting out words that it thinks make sense in terms of, like I said, math and predictions. We see this a lot too with students writing papers and saying, cite me sources. We've had lawyers end up in headlines.
So I've read about those. I mean, I think one lawyer...
Yep. Because it makes up case law. It's not real.
Made all the cases were made up.
Yep.
And I mean, that's wild.
Yeah. That's a hallucination. That's by nature how those models function. Because again, it doesn't, and I was almost going to use the word care, but it can't care. It doesn't have any, it doesn't have a concept of truth. So if we were to go and ask it for some sort of spiritual lesson or something based in scripture, it's going to be able to pull from the data that it has, which is scraped from the internet. So like you said, it's whatever information is online is oftentimes especially these larger models are trained on. Yeah. It can't be quote unquote trained on spirit, on revelation, on human interaction. It just doesn't have that capacity. It's just math.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So everything that we are trying to learn or gather information about, we need to verify.
100% agree. Yep.
Go through,
absolutely.
Say, is this right?
Yep. Okay. Use your own judgment, your own discernment. You can ask it for
sources, right?
Yeah, you can, but then go validate those sources and make sure they're legit.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
100% agree.
All right. So let's go ahead and move to the practical concerns of jobs, of education. I mean, this is an area where it's really easy for students to lean into that. It's
Yep.
For people in their jobs to start fully depending on that. How are you teaching your students on what to look at here? I'm probably reading the same predictions that people listening are reading, and like what's going to happen in the next 5 years, what's going to happen in the next 10 years, what jobs
AI
are
is
going to
take your job,
right? Right. So how are you looking at this? Are you hopeful? Are you a bit hesitant on some of this information that we're getting out ahead of ourselves? Where are you at with this?
Yeah, I think probably a balance of the two. I am hopeful because of conversations like this, because of courses like the one that I get to be involved in at St. Thomas, because people have such an interest in this. Yeah. I think, there was never really a discussion on social media ethics when Facebook first launched. There are big discussions now on AI ethics. So that is very encouraging to me. As far as job market, that's also another big concern that we see with students is, we give them a week at the end of the class that we call the podcast episode, and that's where they get to ask their questions. And the job market is a really big one that comes up, especially because they're in a field that is so technologically heavy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's articles that come out that say AI is going to replace software engineers or AI is going to replace data scientists. Yeah. And I may be biased.
I've talked to people in our church who are software engineers and others going, do I have a future in this field? And it is concerning.
Yeah. And I can understand that. I think for me, the distinction is the technology itself can't do anything. It's not like AI is not going to come into your workplace and take your job. What might happen though, is your company may decide to give your job to an AI platform. I personally think that's a short-sighted business solution or business decision. I don't think that that's long-term sustainable. I think that's evidenced by, there were a huge, tens of thousands of layoffs that happened at some of the big tech companies right after ChatGPT came out. And within a year or two, they had to start hiring those people back because it turns out we cut too deep and got rid of too much expertise. So one thing that I tell students is one way to make sure that you have a future in whatever industry you're in is you need to know, first of all, you're smarter than ChatGPT. And I want everybody to know that you are smarter than ChatGPT.
Come on.
That's not something that people, I think, feel, but you're smarter than ChatGPT. You have something to offer that ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, does not have, and that's you. And I know that sounds overly idealistic. I recognize that. But it's the truth. If you are interviewing at a company, they're going to see something in you that's different than ChatGPT. ChatGPT can't help them with their business strategy, but you can. So position yourself in that way to have a little bit more maybe of a strategic viewpoint on your job or the things that you do. Also, I tell students, be flexible. This is a time of rapid change, and I don't want to minimize that. I recognize what I said sounds very pie in the sky. Yeah. But the other side of that is we are in an environment of rapid change. The days where a person worked at the same company for 30 years, that's gone.
Oh, why? Yeah.
And that's not that's not unique to AI. That was, we were starting to see those trends before. Younger generations now are staying in the same job for about 2 years. So that's very different from what, maybe our generation, the generation before us, saw in the workplace. So be comfortable with being flexible, which is terrifying. But that would be how I would approach that. It is, like I said, I do know that, there's a lot of really legitimate concern, especially if you work for one of those companies that might see this as a quick win to, lay off 10,000 people and have Gemini write all their code. But it's not going to be long before they have to start bringing those people back. And then if you have something to offer more than just the ability to code, you're more likely to have a more stable position.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's why conversations like this are so important, is because the questions that you're asking and the things that you're wondering about, it's not unique to you guys. This is an everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you're not crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and I think, and one of the things you said is, this rapid change. Yeah. And as much as people might think they like change, they don't like change.
Yeah.
We don't, I don't,
it's hard.
We like things to stay the same. And, I mean, if you want to go back to the pandemic and kind of mark from there, the amount of shifts and changes that people have had to go through, it's like there's like this canoe analogy of we're just trying to stand up in a canoe. You're trying to get your
analogy.
footing, and
you're in a river in a canoe.
Right. And you're hitting rocks, you're going to low
Yeah.
places, and then the way, I mean, and so, and I see this in the church, just people trying so hard to hold on to something and be able to have some continuity.
Yeah.
And the AI technology piece here is almost, I mean, because it's so rapidly changing things, it's making it really challenging for us
Agree.
to steady the ship in a way, right?
Yeah.
And
what a great analogy, though, to be on stormy waters and how that might feel being in a boat on stormy waters.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
Well, let's talk. I mean, you've mentioned a lot about ethics, and I think that can lead into because I think of grandparents, I think of parents trying to go so my kids are they're older. My youngest is 20, and so my kids were junior high and senior high ages when actually middle school, junior high ages when like the iPhone came out.
Yeah.
And then I was working as a mental health practitioner in a group home, and so I was dealing with juvenile delinquents, right? So dealing with kind of the technology piece there. Then as I became a youth pastor, and then seeing all this technology starting to come up, and then how our young people were interacting with that. And then now I'm raising kids in that.
Yeah.
And knowing what I know now, I would have been much more strict on screen time. And at that time, parents looked at me as the professional.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is brand new. We don't know how to interact with this yet. And we don't know the dangers and the reliance and just the harm that it can cause with over-reliance and stuff on it. And so, I felt like we were guinea pigs, and we did our best with the information that we had to raise our kids in that environment.
We absolutely were.
Yeah. And so like I would talk to parents, this is what I would do, follow up. Like I remember learning there was one parent that I was so impressed by. He would sit down with his kids and go through their text messages. And I remember he made his son go and apologize to a teacher that he was texting to, like in a group text to his friends.
Oh, wow.
And I was like,
Yeah.
that's the best. And I would gather information from parents, and then I would use that information and kind of like help coaching other people based on kind of best practices that I saw within the parents. So like we're all learning together. And in the same way, we're in now this AI world where parents are trying to, their kids know more than they do about AI. And so they're like, I don't know what to do. So I could see parents just doing nothing. That's kind of what has a tendency of happening, right?
Sure.
Where we just don't know what to do. So we just kind of hope the professionals, which are the teachers or the pastors or whomever, coaches, that maybe they'll help, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So how would you start maybe helping or giving direction to parents who don't know, what to do or how to interact with this?
Yeah. So I can share too how I handle this with my kids. I have 5 kids, varying ages. My oldest is 17, my youngest is 6. So kind of right, my oldest is right around where your youngest is. I can talk through that too. But I also want to hear from you, from your pastoral community and how people are addressing this. One thing that I think it's not a quick answer, but it's going to take some work on the part of us as parents, educators. There is work to be done in learning what this thing is, and I think the option to just do nothing. It's like you said, it's an easy one, but that's really a scary option. So I would encourage every parent. Engage in conversations with your trusted community and see how people, your community members are handling this. Talk to your schools, PTA programs, things like that. Anything you can do, school board meetings. Find out how your school districts are handling this with your kids. You can learn a lot from schools and what schools are doing.
Okay.
There's an organization called Common Sense Media. Do you know them? They're a group that does like movie ratings. So they'll go through. They give a rating out of 5 stars, but it's not how good was the movie. It's more how appropriate is it for your family? And they'll give age ratings and talk about, certain sensitive topics that might be in the movies.
That was Common Sense Media?
Yep, Common Sense Media.
Okay.
They also have resources for educators on AI, specifically for how educators can help families walk through this. So that's a resource that's free. There are a number of other organizations that put out free resources for schools and for families to help navigate. Khan Academy is another one that uses AI, and it's
familiar with that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of organizations like that out there. It does take work though to go and find and learn those things. So that's the not easy part, is that we have to do the work.
All right. So this is too much for us to. This is so. Let's break down a couple things.
Yeah.
Do you think there's certain parts that parents should be like, you shouldn't be on that? This is just opinion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is a tough one, because ideally, our kids wouldn't be using it. However, at what age do they get the internet in their pocket on their smartphone? So that's a really tough one to enforce. What I do with my kids is we talk about it. And every time I hear my kid mention, I've got a homework assignment, or I've got somebody said ChatGPT, I'm like, but you're not using it to do your homework, right? Like, it's a thing we talk about all the time. And I want to encourage parents to do it. I'm kind of an awkward dork. Just be awkward, be the worst. And, your kids already think you are anyway.
Yeah.
So lean into it. Have those uncomfortable conversations that you don't even know what to have. And I say to my kids all the time too, this is awkward for me.
Yeah.
Especially with some of the content that is not only on the internet, but is generatable through AI. We've talked a lot about ChatGPT, but generative AI does a lot more than just language. There's images, there's video, there's sound.
Yeah.
So having just that, I think, transparent conversation with your kids and letting them know, hey, I'm navigating this too. Let's do this together. And that's really scary.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of a growth that can happen in that. I think also just letting your kids, making sure your kids know that you're a safe place to land. And even though you don't have all the answers, you can help, work through it with them. You can help support them as they figure it out. I think it's maybe naive to think that our kids will never use it because they're using it in school.
Oh, sure. Well, okay. So you talked about partnering with schools.
Yeah.
It sounds to me, if I had kids that age, to be like, okay, like the parents asking, because my kids would argue, no, this is fine. I can use my calculator for this or whatever, right? But now it's almost like you should talk to your teachers and say, hey, I need to know how much they should be or can be using this.
Exactly. And what are they using it for?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right.
And is there a particular site that that they're allowed to use or not? So for example, my kids' high school they've got their own site that they use, that they have kids go to. It's one specific thing. So it's not like they can go to any AI model that's out there.
It's an AI model for the students to interact with?
Mm-hmm. Yep, one that the school specifically has them use.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there may be things like, like I said, depending on the school, but yeah, for people with kids in schools, that's a good place to start. And you can also learn a lot if your school doesn't have a response to those things. And that may be where you start to, again, this all takes work, but we start partnering with our school boards and saying, okay, well, if we don't have a plan right now, how can we get one in place? Because at least at a bare minimum, we should be talking about online safety anyway.
Right.
Even apart from AI, there's so many concerns with kids being online. There's cyberbullying and, all sorts of things that existed pre-generative AI.
Right.
So I think that's maybe a good place to start some of those conversations.
Even like, how do you set something up so what your kids are, because you can get into dark corners really quickly, right? And
with a lot of these models, you kind of can't. There's guardrails, quote unquote, they're called guardrails, in place for some of the models, but it's not like for ChatGPT, for example, the free version. You can go in and say whatever you want.
Yeah.
There are some areas that it won't respond to, but the same sort of internet restrictions that may have applied to a regular old website, it's not the same at all for generative AI. So that's where like I said, I think having those conversations, and that's the hard one, right? Because that takes the work. It's uncomfortable, it's awkward. But that's at least how I handle it and how I would recommend a place to start anyway for families.
So what I'm hearing is be okay to sound dumb.
Yeah. Your kids already think you are. Lean into it. Like,
right. And to just say, listen, I'm trying to figure this out with you, trying to figure it out. I'm going to ask a lot of questions and they're going to sound stupid. And
lean into it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just, and talk to people, see what they're doing, find best practices. It really sounds like kind of the time where I was at when,
Yep. It's a time for community to help, I do also think, so as part, I think we mentioned already, AI, so there's these milestone conversations, right, that you have in your life with your kids, but even, with other family members, with aging parents, with just friends, family, community, this is one of those milestone conversations. And it's not exclusive to children. Some of the things
so you're talking about milestone as far as like their development, and you have, so almost like the sex talk.
Yeah. Yep. The birds and the bees, the drugs talk, this is another talk, online safety, generative AI.
Yeah.
One of the areas that probably the most lively week in the class that we teach is the week on AI and relationships. We talk about a platform called Replica, which is it's marketed as an AI companion. And it is designed to mimic a person who's chatting back with you in a relationship type concept. It's wild.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is, people can go online for free. We have a class Replica, and we have our students interact with it because they're master students. They're fine.
Yeah.
They're not 6 years old.
Right.
But that's one of those pieces that I think needs to really go in those milestone conversations is, hey, we know generative AI is out there, and platforms like Replica, like Character AI, these may be really familiar. They've been headline grabbers in the last couple of years, so people may have heard of these. They are designed to mimic human interaction, which can be really dangerous for somebody who is in a place where they are very vulnerable.
Yeah. Lonely, isolated, all the things, right?
Yep. Those are the kinds of things that need to be included in those milestones.
Kind of tell Replica then what kind of person they're looking for.
To an extent, yeah. There's a paid version where you can get some pretty explicit content, but even just the free version, you can have a conversation with it like it were a person.
Yeah.
The responses are kind of comical sometimes, but
and there's commercials right now. I can't remember which actor it was, but it was a pretty big actor interacting with it like throughout his day, like it was a person. I'm thinking, you're selling this right now to the masses. This is it's a pretty.
Yeah, but understanding our boundaries with that too. There've been some news stories recently too where people come out and talk about how it's affected their marriages.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So those are things that like I said, it should be part of those milestone conversations, not only with your children, but with our spouses, with our friends and family, with our aging parents who might be a little bit more vulnerable to scams.
Oh, yeah.
So like I said, generative AI is more than just language. So a person can.
I'm going to interrupt you. Okay.
Yeah.
So talking about scams.
Yeah.
Right. So, the U.S. just had the ordeal with Venezuela, right? And a bunch of videos are going out of people celebrating in the streets, and the most seen ones were AI generated. And this goes for everything now. So now we're in this world where it used to be, your eyes were, whatever you see, show me and then I'll believe.
Right.
And now we're seeing it, and we can't. What do we do? What do we do in this world of? Even the big named news organizations, you just name it, they've been trapped by this. They've
Correct.
used false information, and so.
Celebrities, politicians, yes, 100%. This is we spend an entire week on this in AI ethics, is generative AI and misinformation.
Okay, so now we're in ethics.
Let's go.
Okay, so.
Okay. So the good news here is that even though this is, AI is kind of a new headline grabber. It's the technology, like I said, has been around since, or at least discussions of it have been around for decades. But the way that we're seeing it now, specifically with generative AI, is pretty new. But the tools that we need in order to be able to handle that, we already have in our toolbox. So this is things like making sure we go to a reputable source for information, which was an issue pre-generative AI.
Yeah, that's true.
Making sure that we are, one of my favorite, I think I told you this, one of my favorite messages that you've ever preached was about how we are lovers of the truth. And so before we share something on social media, we better make sure that it's true. That was an issue before deepfakes existed,
Right.
before Photoshop existed. And Photoshop isn't even AI.
And that's this is a conversation I've had with, many people in my life where they share the story and I'm like, I'm not even going to read the story.
Yeah.
Did you look at the website where it came from?
Right.
And then a lot of times they'll even, it's so wild. People are crazy. They have all these sources, and then if you click on the sources, it goes back to that same page. They source themselves.
Yep.
I mean,
and that's pre-AI. AI didn't do that.
True.
That's a person.
Yeah, that was before. And so,
Yep.
I mean,
yeah, there's just more of it now. There's such a higher volume. So that diligence is, I think, again, it's the same tools that are already in our toolbox, just at scale. So we have to be even more diligent with what we see online, particularly in social media. There have been studies that show that misinformation travels a lot faster than true factual information, which should be a key to us right away before we share something. Make sure it's true from a reputable source.
So
not,
this is exhausting.
Yes.
Like to actually figure out, like I have a very good friend of mine that I grew up with that became an Anglican priest. And, you kind of go through all of your education and your study. And I just remember we were having this awesome conversation. He's just such a great dude. And he said to me, I just got to the point where he said, just tell me what to believe. I've done all of the rigor and the studying. And I at this point, I trust, like what you're teaching me. And I need to know what to believe.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're in this time where it's so tiring to have to go through and figure out what is true and what is not. And so, this is an unanswerable question probably of like, what are we to do in this? Like
it is
in this world,
exhausting.
like what can we actually believe?
Well, one of the consequences of this might be that our days as, armchair social media political commentators need to, maybe changing. Things like where we get our information from social media. We've
right.
Sort of started that trend especially since Facebook and things took off. Well, gosh, we're old now, almost 20 years ago. But yeah, these are things we might need to reevaluate. Yeah, you're welcome. Gotcha. That's stuff we may need to reevaluate is, should we be getting our news media from a 240 character headline on a social media website? Probably not.
Right.
And that goes back to, your question earlier of recognizing truth. It's all related to the same thing.
But it's also, there's a lot of gatekeepers that, have been established and all of a sudden they're losing power because there was a lot of filtered information and truths that were not being out there. So now we're in this, period of anybody can have a mic and just start proclaiming and saying things. Yeah. And
so we really have to be careful.
The power structure is changing. So I don't think that has settled.
Agree.
Yet. You're right. Who's going to actually come to the surface of who's the Dan Rathers of today, right? Yeah. And so we're in this strange time, and so now in ethics,
how do you? I'm curious too. I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, go ahead. I've been cutting you off the whole time. So.
Well, good. We'll put that counter up. So I'll get one up now. No, I'm really interested to hear. So in your community of pastors and leaders in the church, how are other people in those kinds of positions navigating this with people? I'm assuming you're getting questions from people. How are you guys handling that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that for friends of mine, we're asking questions. Yeah. Of course we use it for jokes and things. I have a pastor friend who, he was dealing with somebody in his congregation, and he put the email, like the negative email that he had from somebody, and he said, ChatGPT, give the snarkiest, most sarcastic responses possible, and write a letter in response to that. Yeah. And he sent that to me, and he said, I just needed to vent, and this was a fun way of doing it. And so, so there's some things like that you have some fun with. And I think, especially after, when we started the podcast, I talked about how one of the studies I had read was talking about when people have the over-reliance on something, they can actually start to lose the ability to do that. And so Plagiarism was an issue before AI.
Right.
I mean, it's been there, right? And so I try to do my best to cite sources when I preach. It's really important to me.
That's excellent.
And then now with AI, for me personally, my concern is over-reliance. Always checking to see. I mean, I used Google before if I couldn't remember where a scripture was. I'm like, I think it's in Hebrews. It's a chapter, and then I just put it in Google and, the Bible app or whatever would pop up. And ChatGPT is much more specific and it gives more, and this actually sounds like this and like this too. So I can use it as a resource. And like my Logos software uses an AI technology in the software that, pastors have been using now. So all the commentaries, I've got great, amazing commentaries, some of pastor friends who've retired and they blessed me with these commentaries, but now it's all digital. Like it's all right there. So the technology has already been there for quite a while, but I think that the over-reliance is a very big concern.
I agree.
And then the dependence to replace. I think John Piper, there was this famous moment where he was speaking, I think it was last year at a conference. And I don't remember exactly how he responded, but he said, I put into ChatGPT, and he said this at this conference with like thousands of people there, and they just start laughing because the picture in their mind of this, retired John Piper going to ChatGPT. Yeah. and he talked about, and he said like, he put a prayer in there in the voice of a theologian, a dead theologian. It was like this beautiful prayer. Yeah. But then he started to highlight that the Spirit of God is not in this. The Spirit of God is not in this. And so, I think that the conversation is how do we use it? And this comes back to the ethics. Yeah. And I don't know, I think people are growing in it. I think there's tools. Yeah. To have an edit, to see if there's anything that's been misrepresented. I think there's ways to do that. Yeah. But again, using it in a way that replaces your voice is very dangerous. Agree. I am very concerned about it. Yeah. I remember I had, Jane and I went on vacation. I think it was 2 or 3 Sundays off in a row. And I'd never had that many Sundays off in a row without preaching. Yeah. And I remember I sat down to write a sermon and I remember thinking, how do I do this again? Yeah. I felt like I was like, oh man, I haven't done this for a while, you know? And I'm thinking if a pastor starts doing that for a period of time, they're going to lack trust that they can do it themselves. Yep. And then they're just going to have an over-reliance on this.
When the second your congregation hears that you're writing your sermon with ChatGPT, you have lost that trust with them as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially when, you can Google too and go, oh, there's that sermon, right? Yeah. So,
with ChatGPT, it's a little bit different. So that's the interesting distinction between like plagiarism. Before you could exactly that. You could Google it. There was software that you could, in education, you could do a plagiarism checker and see if that same phrasing existed someplace else on the internet. But large language models, it's new and novel. So it's not like that text is going to exist someplace else.
So that goes back to the chaos you were mentioning in the beginning.
Yep, because it's a different response.
But there's something, because my son, he just graduated from North Central University and he was in college kind of when this was going out. Yeah. He was trying to figure out how to use it. And he would tell me like they could analyze it and tell.
You want to know a secret?
Yeah, I do.
They can't.
Really?
Yeah. So there's a company called Turnitin. We talk about this in our class.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Turnitin.
Turnitin, they have a plagiarism detector, but they also they had for a while an AI detector that they had to pull back because they were marketing it as, so there's a couple ethical concerns with this. The first one is they're marketing it as it can detect, when text is written by AI versus written by a human. And it turned out that really it was flip of a coin. Yeah, not much better than chance.
I have a kid who was in our youth group. He's a scientist and teaching at a university. Yeah. And he'd posted just on Facebook, and he said that he went back to some college papers and he put them in and asked it to analyze, and it said that ChatGPT wrote it. Yeah. And he was like, I mean, he's a smart guy, right?
Right.
And so
Yep. It's
so
not
you-
it's
so
not
you're
much better than a
saying
coin
you're
flip.
saying they can't really.
Not with a reliable degree of accuracy, no. So like I said, that Turnitin tool, they had to pull it back.
So maybe we shouldn't have high school students hearing this right now.
I know. Well, I have an answer to that too,
Okay.
for teachers also. But the other piece that's really interesting about that is, so let's say, let's pretend for a second that it really was as accurate as they said it was. It was 99% accurate,
Right.
Which is really high model accuracy for, anyway, that's a good mark if you're that accurate. It's not real, but it would be great if it was. What happens then to that 1% of students that are inaccurately identified as having
Right.
used AI? So there's a whole other thing that educators and schools have to grapple with. One of the things that we've done is we've removed a lot of the written assignments from our coursework. So we do a lot of oral examination. We do a lot of debate. So we're rating them on, live in person. How are they, how are students processing the information? Yeah. Some schools I've heard of will do tests with a paper and pencil. So there's a lot of adapting that's happening in the classroom. But that, to your point earlier, though, that's schools. What about social media influencers? What about news programs? What about churches? What about sermons? What about speeches? And in some cases, the hard truth is that we just won't know. But I do know one of my favorite stories to tell in class too is somebody that I used to work with a while ago used ChatGPT to write, those like mandatory fun meetings that people have to go to at work. Like, it's the end of the year and here's all the great things we did and rah, 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 all those kinds of things. This person had used ChatGPT with a spreadsheet that they had of, people's names and all their accomplishments. Put this spreadsheet into ChatGPT and said, write me, the rah, rah message.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of things that were incorrect. There were people whose names showed up and said, this person was on the team, but they really didn't do anything. And this person sent out that to the entire team without validating it first. So what started off as something that seemed to be, creating efficiency really turned into a degradation of trust.
Harmful too.
Yeah. So that's something like I would say for folks that are in a position of influence, pastors, whoever, speakers, educators. I do not use ChatGPT to create my class material. It may seem like you are saving yourself time or getting something that you might think is a better product. It's not. You're smarter than ChatGPT. But by doing that, you have to consider the trade-off between any time you might save yourself and any damage to a trust that you may have.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that is, so when you're talking about ethics, that is what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's a big part of
trust.
responsible use. Yeah, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
I had a friend who, his wife won this very prestigious award in her field. And so he asked, I can't remember what model it was. I don't think it was ChatGPT, but it was one of them, asked to write a, congratulations message to her. And it had included phrasing that said, she's a wonderful wife and mother. Well, they don't have children. So he luckily caught it before, something went out, because that's, that can be a sensitive point for folks. And
absolutely.
So even little wording like that, can, like I said, it seems like you're saving yourself a whole lot of time, but just because you can use AI to do something doesn't necessarily mean it's the right solution. You might just need that human touch.
Right. So when you're talking about ethics and, you're looking at when you should or shouldn't use it. And so when should you use it?
Yeah. I like to say, so you should use it when in, kind of low risk areas. Like I said, don't
email.
Yeah, that's great. One of my favorite ways to use a language model is to help brainstorm. So if you're trying to think of ideas for how to name something, or if you have an idea in your head and you don't know how to phrase it, those are great uses for language models. My husband does, he does these like online games and things with people. So he'll use generative AI to help generate like an image of a forest or something like that. And of course, there's a whole lot of ethical concerns with image generation that I'm sure people are going to be like yelling at their screen about right now. But those are really, really low risk areas to use it. I would also say that anytime that it's spurring your own creativity rather than hampering your creative thought or your critical thought. So I went to a conference once and I heard somebody talking about using a hallucination to your advantage. So saying, for example, what's a weird flavor of Dr. Pepper? And they would get like dill pickle Dr. Pepper.
Right.
And even though that's maybe not something you would use in reality, it does help to spark those that creativity. So those are really great uses, I think, for generative AI. Again, phrasing, if you're writing your resume, you can help, and you're like, I've got too many words. This thing is, a page and a half long. How can I shorten it up? That's a great use for language models. Don't have it write your resume for you and make up things that you've never done, but, ways to help you refine and help, like I said, get your creative process going.
That's good. That's good. I remember there was a pastor, actually it was Craig Groeschel, so really well-known, nationally known pastor. I think he pastors the largest church, I'm pretty sure, at least in the United States. And, they're the ones responsible for the Bible app that we all get for free. Yeah. I think they said it's well over, I can't remember how many billions of dollars it's worth, and it's free. They pay for it so people can interact with it. And somebody had asked him that question, and he said, he uses it for to do like edits. Is there to bring clarity into a sermon? So he would, put it into a language model and say, is there any part of this that sounds confusing, or somebody who doesn't know Jesus, this doesn't, maybe it's like what we call Christianese, right? It's just a language that doesn't make sense to people. Yeah. And so he gave some, like a little bit of boundaries, I think, for pastors to be able, to use in that way. And so when you had asked about, how we are talking about it, how we're handling it. I mean, I can't speak for all pastors. I can just, speak to myself and, some of my friends. And I think, the concern is there. And I think the ethical concern is definitely there. With your students, do they have questions about the ethic aspect of like, what is okay and what is not?
Yeah. We spend 14 weeks on it. They very much do. A lot of it boils down to just because you can doesn't mean you should. Okay. And having them be a little bit more critical of, just because a company says that a model can do this, it doesn't mean that it really can, but it also doesn't mean that it's right for your situation, which again is where your critical thought comes in. So like I said, using generative AI to write an email, we talk about an example of a college using ChatGPT back in 2023, using ChatGPT to write an email in the wake of an awful tragedy that happened at the school. And they had sent out this email to families of students. And they said in the bottom of the email, which we tell our students, disclosing that you use generative AI is not a bad thing. But in this situation, they put a line in the bottom of the email that said, this message is paraphrased from ChatGPT. And that prompted quite I'm
sure outrage.
Oh, very. Like, yes.
Why didn't this come from your heart?
Yeah. Yes. They said in a time when you're talking about community and, needing to band together, you couldn't be bothered to write an email. Right. So that's a lot of the, how you can kind of weigh, and how we work with our students to weigh whether or not you really need to use it. There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of sales pitches that say use it for everything. Sam Altman was just on one of the late night shows saying, I can't imagine raising my kids without generative AI. I think we talked about that on Sunday. Maybe that's not the best way to, use it. So kind of weigh, like I said, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And what are the impacts if you're using it versus having that human touch?
So Sam Altman, you brought him up. Yeah. So, he's going on, making his rounds. Yeah. And do you see like the predictions and the things they're making as helpful or harmful for like how much it's going to replace? I mean, we have people talking about that we're not going to need to work. We're all going to get that. So who is Sam Altman?
Yeah, Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI. OpenAI is the company that is responsible for ChatGPT as well as some other tools. People may have heard of DALL-E, which was an image generator, Sora, which is a video generator. It's all coming from OpenAI. Sam Altman, so being the CEO of a company like that, one thing that I would encourage folks to kind of filter their answer through what does this person have to gain from this prediction. And I'm not here to like vilify Sam Altman. Not at all.
I love that you said that. I mean, we have to look at that. Yeah. Right? Why are they saying this?
Right. Because he'll make a lot of money if everybody uses this tool for everything, right? So, and like I said, I'm not here to like vilify him. I'm not saying I don't know him. I don't know his, I don't know his life. But as we're evaluating those kinds of predictions, and it's not just from Sam Altman. There's a lot of the really big companies say similar things. The big tech CEOs that are in all in the headlines say a lot of things like that. Think about though, what is the? I'm trying to be really careful with my words, and maybe I shouldn't. What is the incentive to those folks for job replacement? Salary cost is a big part of a company's budget. But again, in my opinion, closing down large departments, getting rid of institutional expertise is a really short-sighted business decision. And I think eventually folks will start to realize that. I think, again, the concern is real about, we talked about that job replacement, things like that. But yeah, I would say just kind of filter that prediction through its source.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. And, the argument of, it taking jobs, the argument is it's going to make jobs.
That's also,
the industrial age,
Yep.
Started to make things more efficient.
Yeah.
Right. And it also produced a lot of new technologies and avenues. And so
that's where we stay flexible.
That's the hope, right? That this will create more work. So safety and privacy.
Yes.
And I think of, the safety piece. I think of our people. I want our people protected.
Yes.
And these things are getting so clever.
Yeah.
And sometimes Jane and I are like, oh, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Like these scams that come through, texts on our phone calls, emails. There's some really, really good ones. And I'm connected and work with our Maple Grove Police Department. And
Excellent.
they are going into homes and dealing with people that have been, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, goodness.
That people have been taken advantage of. And a lot of times they won't even report it because they're so embarrassed about it, and I know somebody who, the people who have lost somebody because a lot of times that information, the obituary is now public. People, bad actors out there use that information to target them and steal money from them. So when we're talking about safety now, and I want our people to be protected. Yeah. So Jessi, it is your responsibility.
All right.
To protect.
I don't know about all that.
Protect our people. So what are some things we can do?
Yeah.
Best practices. Just I don't know. What do we do?
There's a lot to unpack with that. So first of all, the word privacy you mentioned in there. My colleague that I co-teach with, he is an expert in privacy, and I have been so incredibly blessed working and learning from him. There are so many things that I didn't even think about with online privacy, even though technology is my job and it has been for, almost 15 years now. Privacy might, and I'll confess, I was in this camp too for a while that, everything's on the internet. So what do I have to hide? Right, I'm not a criminal. I'm not a whatever. What do I have to hide? But what people I think really need to know when we're talking about AI, and particularly generative AI like ChatGPT, is what you put in there is not private. You have no reasonable expectation of privacy when you are conversing with a chatbot.
So if somebody starts putting in, hey, I'm having these health signs right now.
Yep.
What does this mean?
Yep.
So now ChatGPT can do what with that?
So what happens is the information that you put into a model, it's called a prompt. So when you ask it a question or when you put in some text you want it to respond to, that's called a prompt. That's data for that model. It will then take that data. So it takes your prompt, what you put in, and it uses it to continually train its model. What can then happen is another term folks might have heard, it's called leakage. So that data that has been taken from your prompt and used to train your model can then leak out to other users. Wow. So if you are, a great example of this is if you work in a company and you need to write a rejection letter to somebody who didn't get a job, and you go to ChatGPT and say, I need you to write this rejection letter for Dale DeMel, he didn't get the job. That is data that can go back in and that could leak out in some form or another to other folks. So putting things in, sensitive medical information, financial information, identifiers. So your phone number, someone else's phone number, addresses, any kind of, or if in more of a professional context, if you're somebody that owns a business, don't put your trade secrets in, don't put in, any kind of proprietary information, because those kinds of things can
Could just
leak
be
back out.
regenerated to a user that's prompting something.
Exactly.
And you could just use that information.
Exactly. One other thing to be aware of is some of these models. So again, I keep harping on ChatGPT. ChatGPT is not nearly the only one out there. It's just,
Right.
it's the big one
Can I tell you something really funny?
Yeah.
So there, I think it was Gemini came out with this new model, and it was being hyped everywhere. And of course, because they want to make money, right?
Yeah.
And this is gonna, it's better than ChatGPT. And so I put a prompt into ChatGPT saying, in what ways is Gemini?
Ooh.
And so I just
Get them fighting.
and it got really upset. Like
Really?
it actually started saying, like we've had some amazing moments, and where, and
Oh, there's
and
so much there.
Yeah. And it started just some work that I had used it for, and it's threw it back in my face.
Yeah.
And I just started interacting with it like it was a person, and I was like, a little overly sensitive here. Are we, And so here I'm like, I know that I'm debating with a machine that's dealing with this, and
it's just math. Yeah.
and it did respond and said, "You're right, I did overreact." There was this weird, tension with it. So I don't know why that got me off on this a little bit. Do you remember? I totally interrupted you.
No. Oh no, you're fine. No, it was you illustrated the point beautifully that AI is bigger than ChatGPT, and I know I keep mentioning ChatGPT.
Yeah.
There's a bunch more out there, but this piece is specific to ChatGPT. They have what's called memory controls now. That's been released, I think, I want to say it was about a year and a half ago, September of maybe 23, 24, somewhere in there. I don't know what year it is. It's called memory controls. And the way that it was initially marketed was you can tell ChatGPT what to remember about you. So if you have an account, even if it's a free one, and you could tell it, hey, I want you to forget this conversation we had. I want you to forget my name. I want you to forget, blah, blah, blah. But what's happening is the data that the model has that includes that information is not actually deleted. It's just getting masked from being sent back out to you. So we use this as an illustration in class where I create a bunch of accots with my St. Thomas email because I get it banned from places sometimes with what we do. But I had one where I said, I want you to forget my name. I want you to forget, this, that, and the other thing. And it took me only about 90 minutes of some creative prompting to get it to spit my name back out, because it doesn't truly forget like we would think of forget in our brains.
Right.
It's just masking it from it coming back out to you. So anything that you may think is private, or that you may think is confidential, or you may think you can go, forget this about me. That's not how it works. Yeah.
So, okay. So now we know that we need to be careful on what we put in for prompts. What are some other things? I mean, because really, people can, I guess pre-AI, people can go on Facebook and different places, Google you. There's just a lot of information out there that people could get about you to make it sound like they know you, to scam you.
Right.
So what are some protections that people can do? Because yes, there are people in our society and maybe elderly people who, they were older. They just didn't even really deal with the internet much.
Yeah.
But I would say we're all vulnerable to a degree, right?
100%.
And so
this right here, what we're doing is data that could be used to create deepfakes of both of us. Just this amount of discussion that we're having could be used to create deepfakes of both of us.
Wow.
So what I would say is for folks, especially folks who aren't on the internet very much. So, our older folks who may have, our aging population that may have children, grandchildren, et cetera.
Right.
Your children and grandchildren are on the internet. And things like deepfakes are so much easier to create. So you don't have to go to someone's Facebook profile to learn about them anymore. A person could take our conversation right now and make a deepfake of me saying, I'm in jail, I need you to bail me out, send money, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
This is going to sound insane, but one of my favorite ways to counter that is have a password. Just like we did when we were kids. I don't know if your family did that. My family did that. There was a password and you didn't write it down anywhere. You didn't, you
just knew the word.
You knew the word. So if someone came up to you and said, my mom sent you, or your mom sent me to come and pick you up, you'd be like, great, what's the password? Same
Right.
principle.
Wow, that's
so
brilliant.
It's a tool that we already have in our toolkit.
Yes.
Because again, these things are so convincing. And especially just audio. I mean, like I said, just with the short conversation we're having now, someone could create something that sounds just like me or just like you.
Right.
So one way to combat that is it's kind of an old school solution, but have a password.
Wow.
In that milestone conversation that you have with your family, include a password.
I
And then
love
you
that.
don't share that with people.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a great way of doing it. What about, because a lot of times what scammers will do, or they'll make it seem like time is of the essence.
Yeah.
This is imminent, and
Yep.
you don't have time
Yeah.
to verify, right?
Yeah. So I would say for those, that can be tough. But again, in those milestone conversations we have with our family, let folks know that, hey, if I get a call like this from you, I'm going to call you back on your cell phone.
Right.
Or, we have this protocol that we're going to follow. Like I said, we have a password, we have a whatever, or there's a, this is going to, again, this is kind of getting out of the AI piece, but if you have a family member who has never called you and asked you for money, that might be a red flag right there.
Well, I mean, this happens to pastors. It happened to me. I had to send out
Yeah.
an email to our church.
Yeah.
Because, there was somebody asking for money or something.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a pretty common
Yep.
one. I think it was going out on like Facebook Messenger. I don't know. Somebody duplicated some kind of an account or something.
Yeah.
And so, it's embarrassing because it's like, well, you've known me for this many years. I've never done that before. Right.
Right.
And so,
Yeah. But letting people know where that boundary is. We've talked a little bit about boundaries tonight, but that's another, I think, a really important piece to know in the relationships that you have. What are your boundaries? If my kids called me and asked me for money, that's one thing.
Right.
But if somebody I worked with 5 years ago called me and asked me for money, that's a boundary that I have with them. I'm not going to just send them cash.
Right.
Or if somebody that I follow on the internet, called me and asked me for money. So really, really evaluate where those boundaries are. And then, like you said, too, I think that's fantastic that you communicated that to the church. People can do that in their own lives as well. You can talk with your friends and family and say, hey, I'm not going to call you and ask you for money. I'm not stuck in a jail in, some country outside the,
I was thinking, man, maybe I should wait and see if any money comes in first.
Right.
Oh, by
Scam the
way,
scammer. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's an important thing for people to be aware of, is that, we're kind of used to the old school, email tricks that it's some prince that needs your help.
I love what you said. I mean, like I'm already thinking of, okay, we have my family group chat, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, we need to have a password among us that just, we know that.
Yep.
I mean,
And you don't put it in that group chat. Don't write it down.
Right.
But yeah.
I mean, just very practical,
Yeah.
right? I mean, just very, very practical for people. What are, and I know that, we had some questions that went back and forth between us. What about spiritual implications for people? How do you feel that this could impact the or AI in general?
Yeah.
How that could impact people's spiritual lives?
Yeah. So I think right away, it's important to remember AI is not the devil and AI is not God. I think right when these models started really making a splash, there were a sort of surprising, I think, amount of people who felt that this was a sign of, the end of the world.
It's like
and
it knows everything.
Yeah,
Right.
that it had some sort of spiritual component to it. And again, it doesn't. It's math. Math is fantastic, but math is not God. Math is not the devil. So right away, we need to know that. Also, it is not a counselor.
I mean, if you think about it,
Yeah.
I mean, through the ages, people have made idols.
Yeah.
Right. So they can. Sometimes it's if we want to use the word prompt to physically look at something. Not that they're worshiping that thing. I mean, yes, there's idols that people have worshipped, but
Right.
Sometimes that there's an image that it allows,
Like
it
a
helps.
stand-in
Yeah,
for God,
it helps them to be able to pray, where the scripture tells us that thou shalt not have any. It's
Right.
very clear that we should not have any.
Yeah.
And
Not consulting mediums. Those are all things too that are
right. But this can become a very quick idol.
Agree.
into a place that's almost like responding to our prayers. And so,
Yep.
I as a pastor, I look at this and I see, some deep concerns, especially you're talking about the replica and different things, that this could become an idol, break relationships, so quickly.
Agree.
And so, so I think, what you're saying about, that this is not truth.
Yep.
would you have any other guidance when talking about this?
I do. So 2 things come to mind right away. The first one is what sharpens iron? Iron sharpens iron.
Right.
ChatGPT is not iron.
Right.
You and I are iron. Community is iron. Are obviously, reading the word. ChatGPT is not iron.
Right. So just to push on that first, or not push, but so I should say build on that because if I'm doing something that's harmful or hurtful, ChatGPT could encourage what I'm doing.
100%. And in fact, it is built to do that because then it keeps you using the model. So they are trained
You're
to
so
respond
great.
that way.
Man, that's
right.
was so
You're
smart.
right. I overreacted.
Yeah.
That's by design.
And so the community of God, the people of God.
Someone who can hold you accountable, ChatGPT
saying,
will not do that.
That's what you're doing is, it's just not good.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly. And that's by design. It is not designed to hold you accountable. It's not designed to push back on you. It's not designed to tell you when you're wrong. It's designed, in fact, to do the opposite. Right. It also, this kind of goes back to the boundary conversation, but one thing that I do worry about, and kind of back to the replica piece, the relationship piece, is we in any relationships, right? Families, parents, children, et cetera, but particularly like in our marriages, need to ensure that our boundaries are set up such that we are very clear on, your behavior on the internet means this to me. If you are conversing with a language model in a way that, you're expressing vulnerable thoughts or you're, whatever it might be, you're removing intimacy out of that relationship. So that's an important boundary, I think, also to discuss in terms of it. And it's also, like I said, it's a little bit of a safety thing as well, because, you wouldn't want your spouse going and sharing your secrets now with what we've talked about.
You're also talking about leakage.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So now,
my husband did this and I can't believe it. Like, don't put that in the internet. Because like I said too, it's not private.
So this is, kind of interesting. And this could go back into ethics of, you're essentially saying a person could be having an affair.
Yes.
Like behavior.
Yes.
With a
very. Yeah. They are in a sense.
Because you're emotionally.
Yes. It's an affective relationship. Affective starting with an A, meaning emotional. And there are studies we talk about this in class on the Replica Week. People really do form those connections. And it seems at first, well, you can't have a relationship with a machine.
Right.
But the feelings that a person has, all the things that are chemicals that are happening in your brain are still released. It's still an experience for, even though it may be one-sided.
Right.
And that's something that can be, it can become a trap for people. And then, like I said, if you are in a relationship, it can start to erode the trust and the intimacy within that relationship. You're not meant to be married to ChatGPT.
I've thought about this in some ways, but not in others. So, I feel like now I'm going to need to even have conversations with people about even premarital counseling.
I agree.
You need to form some boundaries on how you're going to interact with these models. And, and I see so many technologies that are so beneficial and with AI, but I also see this other aspect of the human part where we need to be healthy and whole, and we want our people to be flourishing, but not in a way that they're becoming dependent on this thing that it is their benefit for you to use it as much as possible.
Right.
That means money.
That's right.
Are you able to explain? I know we kind of have to wrap up here, but can you?
We'll have to do a part 2.
I know. Can you maybe? And I feel like I've tried to explain this to people.
Yeah.
Can you explain how they make money?
Oh, well, maybe. I can explain pieces of it.
Okay.
To be completely honest, the financial model around AI.
It's not working yet.
No.
Right.
And it feels like monopoly money. So the way that, for example, OpenAI is making money. So they started off as a nonprofit, but they are no longer that. One of the ways that they make money is through subscriptions. So people pay money for like higher level models. Mm-hmm. So you might hear of, GPT 3.5 and GPT 5, and these are just different models.
Right.
The free version that's accessible to everybody is one of those lower level kind of models. But you can pay for a subscription where you get like a higher powered one that's supposed to be more accurate, or it does this or that. So that's one way to make money. Otherwise, it's a lot of investment from other companies. We're buying into something that, we think will pay off more in the future. But there's a whole lot to that I just don't have a lot of expertise in, because like I said, to me, it kind of feels like monopoly money.
Right.
But it's, that's one way is.
But I
is
mean,
through
the understanding that the more people use it, the more time that they're on it.
Right.
It means
the more dependence they have on it, and the more companies are going to want to buy it.
See that as
Right.
now more money is going to come in. So
Exactly.
really, we are cogs.
Yeah.
And giving to them, right? So
Kinda,
I mean,
yeah.
I think that we need to understand that this isn't all pure motives.
Oh,
let me
yeah.
just help Jessi. I'm just trying to have Jessi be the best she can be.
Right.
I mean,
No, that's not what it is. They wanna make
Jessi,
money.
keep using this because I want your money.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a lot of things online. Social media functions the same way. So again, this isn't a concern that's just unique to AI. The more you click on things on the internet, that's how advertisers make money.
Right.
Some of the big AI platforms now are going to start including advertisements. The websites you click on, that helps drive, whether or not a company wants to pay for an advertisement. It's all engagement, and these generative AI platforms are no different.
Okay. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I know that there's questions that we haven't got to yet, so maybe we'll need to do this again. But thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you for talking with me. This is great.
Well, yeah, and I hope this is helpful
Very.
for somebody that may be like just trying to figure this stuff out. But I know I'm constantly learning. This is got the wheels spinning in my brain as well. So thank you so very much.
Yeah.
And,
thank you for sharing your experience with me too. I think it's good for people to hear, how you're seeing this. And like, I'm a techno dork, and it's really good to hear how you're also handling it, and to get our different perspectives. So I appreciate you having this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.